Hello, and welcome to this week's podcast with me, Mark, and my associate, Steve. As you may know by now, what we do is Steve looks through the media. He may talk about things that are what we call mainstream, or things that are not so mainstream, or things that may be hidden behind some news. So, why don't you grab a coffee, sit down, and join us in this conversation. Okay, over to you, Steve.
Hi, people. Right, so in the UK, we know that the trials and tribulations of the BBC were the main news stories for the most part of the week, and in the US, the dismal earnings of Disney films or Disney associated films, latest being Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think it was, or something like that.
Indiana Jones, they called it.
Indiana Jones 5, which went down like a lead balloon. Parallel to that, there was a film, an independent film released called Sound of Silence, which was about, it's a docu-film. It's a film based on true stories about the capturing and trafficking of young girls for the sex trade in the US and also for other countries. Also, parallel to that, there was a documentary released. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that there was a guy in Ukraine who was caught smuggling a girl, trying to smuggle a girl out of Ukraine. But her destination was different than the young girls in the Sound of Silence film. She was to be broken for spares. She was to be done away with, and all her body parts would be taken out to be sold as spare parts for other people in hospitals that needed them. He said that he used to get. He said that he got $25,000 for each girl that and it was his third attempt to. He'd done two, and it was his third girl that he wanted to take out of the Ukraine. Since then, that was 2 weeks ago. Since then, this documentary was released called Tanks for Kidneys, and we questioned whether this guy was a lone wolf or if there was a greater organization behind what he was doing. And it turned out that the trafficking of organs on the black market is rife. It's really big business. And so, like I said, this documentary was released at the end of June, specifically about the illegal organ trading in Ukraine. But it happens in other places too, where there's a zone of war, a zone of conflict. So let's start off. This documentary was made by a lady called Tatiana Borsch. She's an investigative journalist from the Eastern Europe. We'll begin by saying that in 2021, in December the 16th, in Ukraine, a law was passed saying that people, when they die, their bodies basically protects the state, and that the state can take their organs out. They don't need to ask for permission for anybody. They just do it. You know, if they think fit, they'll do it. And also in 2022, shortly afterwards in April, another law was passed saying that that organ transplants are free from VAT, which is when you're dealing with something that has such a high price, VAT is a fair chunk of change as well. and so they stopped doing the VAT on this. And basically, what the documentary was about is that entities were taking dying dead soldiers and reaping their organs to sell on the black market. Not only soldiers, but also civilians who had died or injured. Or injured, we'll get onto that. During the conflict. There's a guy, a general called Gorin Petronovich. He said it's happened, this same thing has happened in Africa, the Middle East, Syria, Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, Yemen, and now it's happening in Ukraine. And who's been implicated in this harvesting of body parts is an entity, an ONG, according to this documentary, is Doctors Without Borders and also the Red Cross. Now, I know that the Red Cross in Africa was doing a project in Africa, and for African women to take part in this project, they had to be sterilized. And that was one of the, it was a Bill Gates project together with the Red Cross, and the Red Cross was sterilizing the women so that they could for them to take part in this. It was some sort of social project, but so these big organizations, they can be quite vicious when they appear to be doing something that was going to benefit the society where they were. The Doctors Without Borders, they provided, once again, according to this documentary, mobile crematoriums, and they would go nearer towards the front where the soldiers were being killed, and cremate them where they were. However, one guy, one of the crematoriums was blown up by a Russian shell, and when the Russians came and saw the crematorium, they saw that inside the crematorium, instead of having a group of soldiers waiting to be burned, there were boxes. There were boxes with organs in them, and the dates when they were taken, and the time and the date, and they were ready to be shipped off. Because what happens apparently is that these organizations receive a shopping list from a load of different clinics mainly from Israel, UK, Germany. They send them a shopping list, and then they reap the organs in Ukraine and send them off to these clinics. And so this mobile crematorium was with these boxes, these like coolers, and full of these organs with all the details about when they were taken out of the bodies. Now, according to the World Health Organization, there are over 10,000 black market organ sales a year. And the organs themselves, a liver can cost, these values are in euros. A liver can cost between 150 and 550,000 euros, a whole liver. A cornea from the eyes, between 4 and 15,000 euros. Kidneys are between 18 and 250,000 if you want the pair, euros. Bone marrow is sold at 20,000 euros a gram. The heart is between 160 and 300,000 euros. A lung is 60,000 euros, and if you want a pair, it's 200,000. Probably because they have to be compatible for the recipient, you know. And so if you've got two that are compatible, and the recipient it's compatible, then the recipient pays more to get the pair. Different groups. There are different groups. I mentioned Doctors Without Borders and the Red Cross being implemented in this, but there are different groups. There are different mafia groups that go around doing this. So it isn't just these two entities. There are others. Ergo, our friend at the border, you know, who was caught at the border. And they say that some are for transplanting. Some of these groups go for the organs, and others are trading arms. Trading arms. And they say that these clinics, like I said, Israel, Germany, Canada, France, they said they're like Ukraine because they're cheap. Basically, they're cheap. And as well as soldiers, enemy combatants, and civilians killed in the conflict, they harvest their organs. There are some cases where soldiers have been badly injured, and these Doctors Without Borders have taken them to a clinic. Instead of trying to heal them, trying to tend to the wounds and all that, they just let them die and harvest their organs and then ship them off, depending on what the shopping list is like, what the demand is. Since 2014, orphans have also been taken mainly from the Donbass. There's been a civil war in Ukraine since 2014. And so these entities.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that. That's like technical issue. I will respond to the items Steve has just been discussing.
Thus far.
Thus far, yes.
Yeah, I've got some good information.
Yeah. Yeah. With regards to the news about the news presenter in the UK, I don't want to dwell on that. As far as I understand, nothing illegal has occurred. Whatever you might think of the ethical or other things about it, due process will take its time. The BBC are having an inquiry. I don't know how you could really fault the BBC because they were protecting the employee on false what could be proved to be certainly not illegal allegations. Let's put it that way at the moment. Moving on. Yeah, I'm not really careful what I say here, but yeah, there's no illegality has been reported. Moving on to the Indiana Jones film with Lucasfilm, who were bought by a lot of money by Walt Disney a while ago. Yes, it's about the fourth or fifth film that is basically what we call tanked at the box office. I'll be quite honest, as a person, it's quite sad for me because I grew up with the Indiana Jones franchise or films. I don't like the term franchise, with films, being entertained by them. Even the Crystal Skull I found entertaining, which was probably still a film too many. I haven't seen the latest one yet. I think there was a lot of bad publicity before it. There was a lot of talk, a lot of I watched some podcasts by people that commented about the film industry, and they're all a bit indifferent. They were getting leaks from the set, and apparently the thing got reshot about 3 times, which pushed the budget up. There's all sorts of things meant to be going on within Lucasfilm itself. So yes, it's Disney's umbrella. It's a Lucasfilm problem. Obviously, Disney have got their own sets of problems, but if I think, yeah, you stick with Lucasfilms because it's all part of their Lucasfilm franchise. It's a sad thing. It's a sad demise to what was actually an entertaining thing. People moaning about the film having this and that. The films have always had plot holes in them, and you could analyze the scripts or the plot and say this couldn't happen because this A, B, C, D. You can do that with James Bond. You can do that with lots of different films, even Star Wars. Go to cinema, be entertained. I think the issue is here is it's not entertainment. It's whatever you might call it, suspected virtual signaling, or it's not even making films for our time. The films are set in a certain time frame with attitudes. They're not contemporary for today. Yeah, there's some wrangling within Lucasfilm, which people may or may not have lost their jobs. People may be in embarrassing situations. It's been termed as a civil war going on in Lucasfilm at the moment. So that will play out. Again, it's very sad. The interesting thing is, as you said, this Sound of Silence film, which was made about 5 years ago or completed, was owned by a subsidiary now of Disney. I think it was 20th Century, but can't remember. It has since been acquired by a studio called Angel Productions or Angel Films, who specialize in, well, basically ethical stroke religious material content. They were notable quite recently because there's a series on Netflix called The Chosen, which takes a look at a certain guy who was born in Bethlehem in Galilee and went round and formed a religion and his followers. Actually, even if you're not religious, I would say it's a good watch because it looks at these people as humans, as people, and not necessarily as totally divine, which has again caught some flack. But that was done with crowdfunding and has proved to be very popular, money-making, although it's a not-for-profit, I believe, but a money-making venture. And the same would appear for here. They got a good deal on a film that wasn't going to be released, that probably nobody thought would be, and people have an interest. In the US at the moment, on certain news channels, there's all sorts of speculation or criticism, calling it QAnon, conspiracies, and all sorts of things. So, which is interesting. I don't know if it's what I would call entertaining material, which is what I said. You know, the Indiana Jones, I like to go and be entertained with complete nonsense for an hour and a half or 2 hours in this case. I do not know the film, but it sounds interesting, and lots of people have raved about it who have seen it, come out of the cinema thinking, apparently. I've not seen a bad review about it, only from people on telly, from journalists. People that have seen it liked it, if you can like that subject matter.
There have been bad reviews about Sound of Silence, but from the very left wing. Also, funnily enough, from Hollywood, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jim Caviezel, who stars in it, his career was all but finished with one of the most popular 18-rated, or the most popular 18-rated film to date, The Passion of the Christ, a Mel Gibson film. And Mel Gibson said to him, if you take this role, your career will be finished. I think he's done a lot of independent films. He goes from things, he has his beliefs, and he tries to do films around his beliefs and what he thinks. Yeah, he'd made a career. I think he just got warned he wasn't going to have the big career. Maybe he didn't want that. Mel Gibson's apparently persuaded him to do the film many years ago, and then tried to talk him out of it by saying you'd probably never work in Hollywood again. So yeah, there's a lot behind all this. We're living in very, I'll say, strange times. I mean, every time has its strangeness. yeah, I think that the probably Disney are going to be selling off so many different assets to come, and that they're going to even, they'll probably sold this for 10 bob, and who's ever bought it, well, I think it was sold for X amount, and it's made the studio a lot of money. Now they do their own production, I think, or organise their own production. This was not something they produced themselves. They were acting purely as distributors. It opened in half the cinemas, the venues that Indiana Jones opened up in, and maybe was it twice or three times as much money. It's incredible. Maybe that's what people want at the moment. Maybe I don't know if it's a feel-good film. I really don't know. Apparently it's got a happy ending, which, quite how that would be. I'm kind of be objective about it. It's certainly interesting. It's not available in the UK, as far as I understand. It's only distributed across the US at the moment, which might be part of an agreement that Disney sold it thinking it would just bomb as well. It's a rather interesting scenario. As to other things, the harvesting of organs. This is not a new thing historically. During the Napoleonic Wars in Europe, teeth were taken out of dead soldiers, probably dying for all we know. Ripped out and used as dentures back in, dental replacements back in various different, for the aristocracy and wealthy across Europe. So this notion of taking body parts is not new. I know it's a different scale, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, why I brought it up here is because not so much the extraction of body parts, but because, first of all, ONGs are involved.
Yeah.
Where it's Doctors Without Borders, the Red Cross are
Allegedly,
involved.
Yeah.
According to the documentary.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, if somebody was severely wounded, rather than trying to save them, they'd even promote their death so that they could, once again, according to the documentary, we can only go by what we see on the documentary. Promote the death so that they can get the organs if that's what they needed to complete their shopping list. What I wanted to touch on as well, apart from the fact that, like I said, 2014 was where the civil war in Ukraine started. From 2014, children were trafficked, orphan children were trafficked, and nobody knows to where they went. And even a doctor named Bogdan Feds, it was proven to have sold 130 organs from newborns. He killed newborns and sold their organs to the US.
Yeah.
The newborns were born. He killed them, told the mother that they were born dead, and they took the body parts and sold them. Bernard Kouchner was a doctor and diplomat, and he organized organs during the war in Kosovo. Albanians would organize the cutting and the selling, but foreign surgeons did the extraction and transportation. The Albanians, they kidnapped Serbian soldiers and things like that, took them to what is called the Yellow House somewhere in Albania, and that's where all the deeds were done. They were cutting. But I thought it was interesting about the law in Ukraine, basically saying that the body becomes property of the state. And so I looked at the UK to see what the law is in the UK. And in the UK, basically, they have what is called an opt-out system.
Mm.
This was changed in 2020, um, where if you don't opt out, then the UK can use your body parts when you die. They don't necessarily need to speak with next of kin.
Mm.
And in 1999, a year before the law was changed,
Mm.
they used this as a justification for the change in the law. In 1999, 408 people died waiting for body parts.
Mm.
Well, they didn't die waiting for body, if you ask me. They didn't die waiting for body parts. They died by what is called natural causes.
Mm.
you
Lovely.
know. And I don't know why, if you're a poor person in the UK, you die of natural causes. If you have money, I'm sure that you
Romantics,
die
yeah.
waiting for body parts. Although these, to be fair to the UK, the transplants were to be done on the NHS.
Yeah.
You know, then so you
Well,
make of it what you will. And also, I had a look at the law here in Brazil
mm.
to see, and I was really surprised because here in Brazil you don't have a opt-in,
Mm.
opt-out
Mm.
choice, and your body doesn't become property of the state.
Mm.
The law here in Brazil is that when somebody dies, if they have some, if they have an interest in organ that
Mm.
can be transplanted, then the government will always speak with the next of kin to get the next of kin. Even if you wrote a will
Mm.
declaring that you want your body parts to be
Mm.
distributed,
Mm.
in here in Brazil, the government would always, the doctors would always speak with the next of kin, and if the next of kin says that they can't
Mm.
remove body parts, then they don't.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I have a good session of trying to convince the
Well, yeah,
next
of
of
course,
kin,
yeah.
but
Well,
even so, I was really surprised because um, you would have thought that somewhere like here in Brazil, where, to be frank,
mm.
uh, the value of life is not that high in relation to other in relation to other countries.
Mm.
What I
Uh,
mean is that people commit crimes for menial menial amounts of money. So,
yeah.
so the price isn't all that high.
Well, okay, that's criminality.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
even
well,
so,
even so, yeah,
even
I mean,
so, so I was really surprised that Brazil is so um, caring.
um, I'm not really, because yeah, I mean, on the face of it, it is quite, the people here are quite, I'll be careful doing this, religious and spiritual. Brazilians are actually quite spiritual, even the ones who claim not to be. Families are a big thing. And remember, in Brazil, you die and you're put in the ground the next day. So it is quite a
Ain't the
rapid
same
process.
day.
The same day sometimes, yeah,
The same
yeah.
day. Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, yeah, I've seen people have unfortunately succumbed to, young person succumb to a motor accident. He's in the ground the next day. I think when it's obvious what the cause of death is, let's be honest about it. I mean, in the UK, and Brazilians are shocked by this. You put on ice, what we call put on ice, for about 2 weeks,
Mm.
which is quite incredible. Yes, there's probably time to halve or remove items declared. I'm being very careful not to use colloquialisms. Again, we spoke to the other week to take away the impact. Yeah, harvest the parts. It is. I mean, we to say in the UK, my family have always sort of maintained that they'd always give permission anyway. If you're but an organ can say help another person, then there wouldn't be hesitation. My family don't have any spiritual or any other reasons to do it. We have a faith, but it's outside that. Yeah, we believe there's a part of your unaccountable, your soul goes somewhere, which is a part of your organ that nobody can really harvest. Yeah, people talk about the devil. Not even the devil can harvest your soul, because it doesn't belong to the devil. It belongs to God, apparently. It is yeah, it's an interesting debate. Now, getting back to, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned these organisations. I think I've actually encountered people who do work for them. Hopefully it's not an orchestrated thing from the top. It could be some, if it is happening,
could be rogue. It could be rogue workers.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget Oxfam or other organisations have had this problem.
Where I didn't manage to get to with much detail was this Bernard Kushner, who was a doctor and diplomat. He was a diplomat, and he was in the European Parliament. It might have been an MEP or something like that. And he used to organise these organ harvesting parties. And his story was taken to the European Union. He was denounced as doing this in the European Union. And what was done about it? Nothing. You know, there are two important, or at least one important thing to be taken out of this documentary. First of all, the documentary is a Russian documentary.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so you need to understand that as Russia is in conflict with Ukraine, that Russia will try and paint itself as being innocent. And Ukraine is being the bad boys in this. But as we know, politics in the whole world is the same. And everybody has a price. And I'm sure that there is something similar going on in the Russian side as well. But you have to take that into consideration when you watch the documentary.
Yeah. I mean,
because nobody's innocent.
No, I mean, yeah, it's certainly an interesting discussion, and obviously my eyebrows don't often raise when you say things, but when you've mentioned these two organisations, I mean, Red Cross is a political organisation by the very nature of it. Doctors Without Borders was a bit of a surprise, because there's a lot of genuine people, and I think I've encountered a couple who are actually very dedicated to that. It's a bit worrying that their names could be tied with it, or things going on with it. Like you say, we've got to be careful. It has to be substantiated elsewhere.
Well, like I said, I just quote what I know from the information given to me from the doc. By the way, we'll put the link.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we link it
underneath the in the information of this video? It's well worth watching. It's well worth watching because you get a good idea, and you get a good idea what happens in war zones.
Yeah.
But you need to understand that it isn't just happening in Ukraine at the moment.
Yeah.
Where there's there was when Haiti had the earthquake, one of Hillary Clinton's aides was caught smuggling children out of Haiti. She said that she was wanting them to be adopted. But she only said that because she was caught. We don't know the destination of these kids being taken out of Haiti.
Well, this is it.
We don't know if they were meant to go to the slab. We just don't know that.
Yeah.
She said that because she was caught.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's interesting. I mean, there does seem to be quite a few things around these people. Anyway, our clock is running down.
Okay, I'll let you.
Yeah, well, it
Somewhere else.
it's been certainly an interesting, enlightening conversation. Again, I'll reiterate, I never know what Steve is going to really talk about. I get indications sometimes, but certainly very interesting. I think we've covered popular culture in this, some very serious, chilling things that, yeah, maybe worth thinking about.
In the fog of war.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Gates got mentioned in the mix as well. Unsurprisingly, he's a guy who is being picked up by people on all sides of the media at the moment for different things. Obviously, we're talking here on the computer system, which is thanks to his innovations, or him and others. We've progressed in the world with communications and things and abilities, but it's he certainly says gets involved in some quite interesting projects now. Billionaires Club, what's his legacies? Yes, so to really wrap up, obviously, if we get more information about any of these subjects ever spoken about, we'll let you know. Clarifications. We do sometimes seem to be ahead of the curve when it comes to reporting these things, because both Steve and myself during the week actually find or see items that sort of cover it. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us all both, and I'd like to say goodbye. I'm sure Steve would like to say goodbye.
And
we look forward to podcasting to you all again next week. Okay, thank you. Goodbye. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye.